Rolesville Board of Commissioners meeting. This is a Board of Commissioners work session, October 21st, 2025. Thank everybody in attendance. We got a good turnout tonight. Appreciate you coming out. We do have a couple of commissioners on each end missing. Linwood is still sick. He's been sick for a while, so he won't be with us tonight. And then I hear Michael Paul is in Hawaii, so he won't be here tonight either. So we'll be a little shorthanded, but everything will be recorded and shared. So we do have enough for quorum, right, Dave? We do. So we can take action tonight. So I do appreciate everybody coming out. Thanks everybody for being here. So with that, we got consideration of the agenda. We got a few items on there, pre-application for enhancing early engagement at Erica Do Seniors Activity Plan Update. June is doing that. Looking forward to that. June here. Yeah, thank you, June, for doing that. And then new business, I guess you could call this old business. We did have it on the agenda once before. Continuation of comprehensive land use plan update and continuation of the legislative hearing for 10-year affordable housing plan. And I do hear the town manager want to add a executive session. No? Everything good then? All right, so we just want to have those 5 items. And I'll open up board for consideration of the agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion, second, any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say likewise. Sounds like the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The motion's approved. So we do have agenda. And so we'll start off with pre-application enhancing early engagement. Eric, I think you and Mike is going to do that. So come on up, Mike. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. There's no presentation, right?
I've got 2 slides.
Okay. Mike has 2 slides. I will let him go. Well, I'll start with this, a caveat. So one thing that's really important to you all and also to the community, sometimes one thing that we're discovering is that because of how the planning process is set up and how an applicant can submit or make an application and then they put out a public notice on a property. It could be a sign that says a rezoning is happening. And then another thing that our experience is that with our development community, they can come forth with an application. And then after they get to a certain point, they discover that some of the things that they would like to do in a particular area don't align with the, I would say, ever-evolving vision of some of the areas, particularly like the Main Street corridor and some other things that are evolving with our comprehensive plan. And so the presence of those 2 things and this, the simple fact that you all have questions and would like to have some foresight on applications that come down the pipeline to our planning, into our planning department. We wanted to just bring this particular topic to you about early engagement, kind of like an applicant bringing an idea to you all in a more snapshot form to see what you think about it before they submit their application, so that they can get some non-binding general feedback about those things. That's something that we've seen successful. I know the mayor is aware of it. Towns like Hillsborough, an applicant can come and they can engage the planning department and say, we would like to do townhomes in this area with this much commercial, to see what you think about it. And the preface of it is that none of the conversation is binding, and it's not considered to be a formal recommendation, but it's considered to be them doing market research directly with you all to see what the interest and what the potential success of the application could be with you all as a board, us with the community. And so the community can hear the ideas and also chime in when they watch or when they come in for public comment, so we can better engage. We can engage earlier so that we can live behind the words that we see in our strategic plan, which is that growth happens for us, not to us. And so that's the premise of this particular topic. And so we wanted to bring this idea to you all, to if we had to use time within our our work sessions or the second meeting of the month to bring an applicant before you that if they have an idea and we think that it may be divergent or it may be something new that we hadn't heard about, they bring that to you in a snapshot form, maybe like a 5-minute presentation, high level, like what do you think about this, to get feedback before, so that they can make some tweaks that could save them money, save effort, and also be a way that we can do some pre-engagement with the community on what could be a common idea, knowing that these applications sometimes take a year, 2 years, or it may be 3 years before something is actually built. But I'll toss it to Mike and let him go through his 2 slides, but that's the general sentiment behind it, is how we can create this small forum within the system that we already have, which is our board meetings, to bring that information to you. And so I'll let Mike make the presentation and we have a kind of like a discussion about it and we can figure out what that looks like. But in general, we as staff do think that there is a need for us to have a little bit more prior engagement on certain topics, so that things don't come off as surprises to both you all and the community.
Mr. Marsh hit it on the head there. That's exactly what this would be about. Really, my only slide is, this is the current slate of under review, have not come to the Board of Commissioners, rezoning map amendment applications right now. The idea, though, here is before the applicant files an application, gets assigned an REZ number, et cetera, and it becomes public information of files submitted to the town, et cetera, they could bring their idea to the Board of Commissioners, and again, in 5 minutes, tell you the gist of it and get any sort of feedback, thought, et cetera. This would also, again, put it on the radar of the community even before submittal. Then the applicant could file the application. It will go through its normal technical review committee review for 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 months, however long it takes. Then it goes to the planning board, et cetera. And also what happens, of course, with the rezoning, they do a neighborhood meeting, and that does occur before the planning board. And what we've seen recently is that is the first time that the public usually catches drift of a project, and that's when it really takes legs. And so the idea here is to get it out as a conceptual, maybe a what-if project before it even gets applied, and then again, the applicant can do what they wish. They can take any feedback that they receive, tweak the project, not apply for the project, or apply for the project. As Mr. Marsh said, nothing binding here. It's just kind of a public discussion, a public awareness, a test of the concept with the board in a public setting. In this way, again, when we do hear the first blush of a project has hit the airwaves with the public, it's not coming from a position of where did this come from? It would have been vetted maybe and brought forth here. What staff's also not sure of is does the town want to make this compulsory, that every eventual rezoning application has to come through this 5-minute preamble somewhat with the board, or is it a voluntary thing? Yeah. That's another piece of the equation here. Do you want staff to make this a compulsory step of pre-application, or basically to their own benefit, a developer may wish to bring this forward? And I say developer, but really this could be really any property owner out there who may be looking to put their home on the market. And they could say, listen, I'm getting contacted by developers who want to do this on my property. What would the town board think of this? What does the town comprehensive plan say about this? Obviously, staff could provide them that analysis. I do that all day long, answer phone calls and emails about what does the town's vision for this property look like. So in combination with what staff normally does, this would be allow a property owner to come before the board and say, what are the likelihoods here? Am I going down the right road by working with this developer? Things of that nature. So there's a lot of potential benefits to this. And we just thought that this was an idea that should be at least broached with the board and let you all decide. Yeah,
and I'll add before we get your feedback that the goal isn't for this to be a step that happens with every single application, but the ones that we determine as staff to be something that should be of special interest. And so we know some things in your mind have your mind probably gravitates to specific things that popped up. They'd be like, we don't want that there. And so this isn't a way to give an applicant a yes or a no, but it is to give candid feedback. These previews or pre-application or early engagement sessions, we're going to determine what the name of it is. It's not to be a source of action. and say, this is an action, or this is what have you, but this is candid feedback. Or if you don't have any feedback, it's simply to make you aware, and you say, thanks for your presentation, right? And so there isn't any pressure either way, but the goal is to, I think, to implement this as part of also a larger, let's educate the community on how the planning process works, so that when you see a REZ, a yellow REZ sign or orange or one that says, that doesn't mean that it's coming. That means somebody would like to do something here, and that it's in a pre-engagement place. And so I think that it coming from us through this would be more digestible for the community than it come from people driving down Main Street and they see a sign and be like, oh, something else is coming. And they throw it into Google and they say, somebody's about to build an auto shop here. Well, not yet. Somebody desires to do that. And so I think this will be beneficial, but we wanted to get your thoughts on that. This isn't meant to be one of those exhaustive agenda items tonight, but to see if you think this is a good idea and it's something that we can bring, like what the structure of it looks like, or if there's something specific or specific questions that you will have about it, we can do that. And then we'd also wanted to add that we listen to the things that you all communicated in certain areas. You do and do not want in certain areas. And so this is something that we share with them. And so if somebody would like to move despite that, those recommendations, there will be an opportunity for you all to express that stuff directly too.
I think it would be a good idea to pursue that due to the fact that with a lot of development coming, make sure that it aligns with our not current, but our future comp plan and transportation plan, and that way that the citizens as well as the developers can understand the vision to where we're going towards. That way there is no misinterpretation of what the board as well as the planning board and all the departments and the citizens would love to see in those areas. So, yes, sir, I agree with that.
And planning staff has almost always had those types of conversations with the developers before they would ever come before you, even at this
Level.
early stage. But to your point, yes, that would occur.
I think it's a good idea. I wish we've had this for the past 8 years, but it's fine. But I think that the biggest thing you have to do, I don't know if this board will be like that. It just depends on how it goes now and in the future, but you will have to make sure you keep the board mindful that it's an oversight. Like, it is not, do not get down in the weeds. If you put a stop sign here or you do this there, it does not need to be that involved. So I think that just being mindful to make sure that doesn't happen. We don't go down that road. This is just they're looking to put it here. What do you guys think? That's great. Let's go on with it. And that's,
About 3 details deep,
Right.
and that's
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. That way we're not going down a rabbit hole of an actual zoning when it's just more of an informational.
because then you'll be here till 10:30 talking about
Sure
something that
will. Yes, sir.
you don't need to talk about right now.
I agree with Paul, because that's exactly where my mind went, that where it could go. So, but I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea.
And so we'll be limited. One of the things we'll do is we'll limit it by time. And so these presentations will not be a 20, 30-minute charrettes. It will be a few slides. It'd be 5 minutes. Hey, this is an idea, and it's on them to refine it to more like an elevator pitch of this is what we're thinking about. And then there's only so much you can bake into that. And the goal is for it to just be, to get very rapid, like what are 1 or 2 things? It could be a good idea. Well, we look forward to seeing it. Or we don't recommend it. But if you can, but we're not telling them to not pursue an idea. But again, it's just to inform them and give them as much information and let the community know that, be aware of certain things.
And I was thinking, as part of this, again, let's say we get a month where there's no developer applicants wishing to, flush something by the board. Staff can simply come up, show a little graphic like this, and just keep you apprised of where things are in the process. We'll add columns for, has it had its neighborhood meeting yet? Checkbox. Has it gone to planning board yet? In which case it would be, coming to your next meeting in most instances.
Oversight.
So we can kind of give you a little tracker here and show you, and then these cases, instead of, again, seeing them on your agenda for the first time ever, you'll actually become a little more familiar with these as they're all moving through the cycle. And I'll try to ramp them so the soonest one coming you would be on top, and you'll see those orders change because things happen. But again, it'll allow the board and the public a once a month visual look at the queue of rezonings. And we can also do this for text amendments as well. I know right now we've got about 4 in the hopper coming forth. So again, those are legislative come to you. I would like that opportunity to share that information with you monthly, as well as those 5-minute briefings.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. So, if you all think, so our general, if you all think this is a good idea, we'll package this and bring it back to you and maybe have a little bit of conversation. We'll develop the necessary disclaimers that happen before the presentation to say none of this conversation is binding, consider it illegal, blah, 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 blah. We'll work with Dave or whatever we need to create a disclaimer, and we'll let you all know what the structure of it looks like, and then ahead of it actually becoming an agenda item for whomever will be the first applicant to participate.
Good.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And also thanks, Mayor. This kind of root stems from a prior conversation that he and I had with the mayor of another municipality a few months ago. And we thought that it would be a good idea, and it's kind of coming to a place to where it will be really, really beneficial for us to take that step.
Board members, are we leaning toward a voluntary participation or mandatory?
With the rezoning, I mean, I would say everything, but I mean, that's just me. I'm just trying to give you guys more meetings.
Sure, that's kind of you. If voluntary, staff can make this available on its own initiative. If mandatory, it needs to be added to the LDO as part of our ordinance. That's the difference.
Oh, okay.
What they typically do, is it voluntary or?
My recommendation is voluntary. If we see that I think it's voluntary where it isn't, we've seen it displayed. If it becomes something that is so consistent, then we can, and it needs to be more heavily documented or regulated, then we can cross that bridge. But right now, it's something that we just wanted to pilot because we think it will be beneficial. But if it becomes a substantive thing, then it most definitely should transition over to that.
Yeah, let's keep it voluntary for right now, for sure, then, and then we'll see. Any other questions for Mike or Eric on this particular one? So, those 5 that you had up there, are you going to reach out to them and see if are they guinea pigs? Are they the guinea pigs that you come up with?
One of them has already gone to planning board, I believe. The other 4 have not. I can certainly reach out to them and say, you're already in the cycle. They're all public knowledge because they've been through the review, et cetera. They've done, but if they'd like to come and give that briefing, we could offer them that in the November meeting. And if they wish to take it up, then great. So I can have those communications with all of them. So if they would, if they could get here before they'll naturally get here at their real hearing, if they want to take us up on that, I can do that, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a benefit. I mean, feedback I hear from other towns is a big benefit because some of them have little problems that if it worked out before it gets this far,
Precisely.
I think that's beneficial to
It
hear
only help.
hear from the board. Yeah, there's a problem with this, and if you can address it, it'd be a good thing to address.
Yeah.
It looks good for the developer too.
That's
You
what I'm
put it
talking
out there,
about.
yeah, you
That's-
put it out there ahead of
that's the
time,
whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It's
right.
good for develop.
Yep.
That's what I was kind of.
Otherwise, it looks like you're hiding something until right when you get to
That's
the
right.
thing, and I don't like that either.
Put you
so,
under the gun.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So then we should most likely have some applicants here at the November 2nd meeting, and certainly I'll improve our graphics here to give you that.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, Senior Citizen Active Aging Plan Update, June.
I don't, but we can go ahead with that. I got it.
Cool.
All right. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Welcome everybody to be here tonight. Tonight, we're going to discuss with you guys senior programming strategies and impact here in Rolesville. Our vision is to provide opportunities for Rolesville older adults to stay active, healthy, connected through accessible programs, inclusive facilities, and strong community partnerships. When I actually came aboard 2 years ago, I was looking at all of our different programs, and I noticed that we had a ton of programs. But I noticed two demographics well, actually it's three, two that was totally being missed, and that was special needs and seniors. And both of those are very dear to me. And so when I first came on, I had looked at everything there. I got with Tina, our cultural coordinator, and I went with her. I says, what can we do to jazz this up? So, and she says, me and her got together, we started doing some brainstorming. And so during our brainstorming, this is kind of what we've done in these last 2 years since I came aboard. We started Senior Connection Committee monthly monthly meeting, and where they discuss senior programming and community needs. We got a wellness program for our seniors. We do Tai Chi, pole walking, Zumba, line dances, crokinole, and cornhole. We partner with the Senior Network. We partner with Wake County, local government, Humana, local churches, Raleigh Parks and Recreation with their senior programming as well. Currently, right now, last year was our first year coordinating the Wake County Senior Games 5K and 10K road race. And also within that 2 years, we had held our second annual Golden Year Expo. This year we had an increase of 30%. Last year was right at 51, 52. This year we had 73. So we made us move from over here at the community center to a bigger space where we had 13 vendors last year. This year we had 33. And so that was a big improvement for us. And all this stuff was happening within these last 2 years. At the beginning, we didn't have nothing. Here's some of the engagements that we've done with our seniors. We organized day trips to Biltmore Estates, State Fair, which they all went today with the State Fair. We had 6 seniors today. We tried it last year. We didn't get none. This year we have 6. So we are really happy that we are starting to see that the seniors are starting to get out and talk about it. We're trying to do more outreach to our local churches and get some ambassadors to go out and speak to the seniors speaking to other seniors about the programs that we have to try to entice them to come and feel more comfortable being with us. We have weekly gatherings in the community center for bingo, bunco, crokinole, and they also do fellowship. And we're doing our active communication through flyers, social media, and personal outreach. Strengthening our department. Our cultural coordinator currently oversees both senior and cultural programs, as well as our camps, our summer camp, our recess, that's one we do for when there's a teacher work day. We got that one as well. She's over that. So we want to identify need for additional staff to support growing seniors and adult recreation, because that's another one that we don't have no adult recreation. We have like line dances, we have the cultural stuff, but we don't have no adult recreation. So like kickball, volleyball, stuff like that. There's stuff that we want to bring here. So our future goal is to have a dedicated senior center in the town for accessible and sustainability. That's one of the things that we really would look forward to have to strengthen the department. So we have came up with an active aging plan. So this first 2 years is from where we at now, not from where we started at 2 years ago. This is from after all the work that the department has put in these last 2 years. This is where we are looking to move from here. We want to continue the monthly Senior Connection Committee meetings. We're looking to add 1 or 2 new senior fitness or educational programs. We want to grow our senior expo attendance by another 25% from where we're at. We want to begin feasibility study for a future senior center. And we want to work on communicating and providing impact storytelling so that with the seniors, they actually know what they're coming into. Because I think a lot of times they really don't understand what we have to offer here. And I think by just getting out and doing the storytelling, they'll be more willing to come in here. Also, we have other strengthening stuff with other municipalities. This is just doing that 1 to 2 year. And if any time y'all have a question, y'all can just stop me and ask it anytime. For years 3 and 4, we want to expand our transportation access for seniors. Because right now, what we currently have is just a van. And if you know the van, 15-passenger van, they do have a little step up. So we did purchase a little handheld rail for stairs, but still the seniors that get into the back of the van, they have to crawl all the way to the back. So we would love to have some form of transportation to do that. We're going to install some outdoor fitness equipment in one of the parks, which I think would be a great place for the farm. It'd be a great place, put some out there, put some outdoor fitness equipment, and develop an active agent ambassador program. There again, that's where we want to get these seniors to go out and talk for us, and be our eyes and ears and mouth for us, so that we can know exactly what the seniors want and get them more involved. We want to add some more senior social clubs, like a book club, travel club, or even a garden club, something where we can get the seniors involved and come into a place. And also during that time, we want to begin site plan and design for that senior center that we so deservingly need here in Rolesville. Years 5 through 10, hey, there's that opening up that Rolesville Senior Center between them years 5 and 10. We're a good place, it'd be a nice hub for where our seniors can come and enjoy every day, not just for a couple hours, but for the whole day. Hiring an additional program coordinator. That's when we want to expand, because currently right now, the coordinator spends about 30% of her time on seniors. But then once the months of May through August, when she's planning for the Senior Expo, it bumps up to about 50%, because she had to go out and get the vendor. So it's a lot of time. And also during that time, she's also trying to manhandle summer camp. So that's a whole lot for during that time. We want to get a point where we want to host a Wake County senior game here in Rolesville. I don't know if it's going to be, what it be, road race, bocce, or something here in Rolesville, where we want to bring people, because now everything is south. We want to bring some people north to Wake County to participate here. And so after every 3 years, we want to evaluate and update this aging plan, because we all know everything changes. So we want to update that. And we have some measured success through participation growth and satisfaction surveys. How this support Rolesville's strategic plan? Accountability. It's all data-driven, decision-making, and transparent reporting. Teamwork, collaborating with regional agencies, civic partners, and volunteers. Excellence in service, inclusive and responsive programs for older adults. Community engagement, strengthening wellness and social connection across Rolesville. So that's what we are really trying to do with this active aging plan, is for our seniors to get them more involved. So what are our next steps? We're going to present this active aging plan to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and once they are accepted and approved, we will bring it to you guys. So what I'm showing you now is not the actual plan, but it's just bullets out of the actual action plan. We want to refine measurable actions for years 2026 through 2028. There again, that's that 3 years when we want to revamp and look at it. And develop a funding plan for staffing and facility needs, and being advocacy for senior center funding as part of that growth.
Yep.
Thank you. If y'all have any questions for me?
Yep.
Yes,
And so
sir.
I'll add, before you chime in, just some other things that we've been talking about from a staff perspective. Again, this is a draft plan that June is bringing before you. Over recent weeks, I've been meeting with some of you commissioners and talking, and also community members, about the need for more intentional funding, support for our senior program and for our seniors. In addition to that, just looking at how things have been kind of rapidly evolving when it comes to the engagement of our active aging community. And so one thing that I would add, if you go back 2 slides, when it comes to supporting our strategic plan, is this agility and flexibility. As we grow and we become more aware of some of the needs within our community, it's important for us to be, just using one of the mayor's words, agile. And so as we look at this upcoming fiscal year, we're going to be very intentional about how we aren't about how we're targeting supporting our seniors. And so there was a mention of adding a staff member. We will be looking to you all as far as the needs you're seeing in that, and if we need to do that sooner. Then also when it comes to our CIP portfolio, as we're building out new facilities, we're going to be assessing what it looks like to turn something that we already have into a senior center. And then also the more immediate thing that we're doing is assessing the open windows within our programming, within our community center and what we're already doing. And if we can advocate and plug in more programming that targets our seniors. A term that Commissioner Michael Paul has been using a lot is a senior center without walls. And so that's something that we'll be looking to build in advance of having that physical senior center. And so I think it's important that we express that we're not waiting for a building to create the experience that we want to have for our seniors. And so when we look at some of the things in our budget, we're already doing a lot of things with our seniors. June had mentioned that it takes, Tina's here, she's our coordinator, that's up to 50% of her time, but we will do more storytelling about how we're having an impact with that time. And then also we'll kind of like de-aggregate our budget coming into this budget season, so you see what funding and effort, money and effort is going towards supporting that programming, because this is a plan that has already existed and that we have been operating with, and this is an update to that plan, but a lot of people didn't know that the plan existed. And so getting clear along the budgeting, the effort, and also the storytelling behind it, I think will help us better serve our seniors and also get us into a better place where when it comes time to either do staffing for it in the immediate future or further out, it'll be more concrete as to what those staff members will be accomplishing on our behalf. And so I wanted to just add that in there and say and share the broader scope of the context of the presentation, and know that we're working to bring some of these things that are mentioned even closer into the future and into the experience for our seniors. And we look to you all to kind of say how this is moving up and down that priority list, because we know that it's on there. Right. And so any ideas that you all have in doing that, we're also been assessing some things in real time, recommendations that have come from you all. And even though some of those things may not work out as presented, we're recognizing there is an opportunity inside of those, and we're trying to run with those things in real time as well. And so I pitch that to you, Dan. I know you had a question. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to just kind of finish that out as give some context and let you know some things we're doing.
You answered one of my questions when you talk about hiring personnel. And then you talk about developing a funding plan, which was on your next slide. If you can go back to that. Keep going forward. It was almost towards the end.
Okay.
Yes, develop a funding plan for staffing need and facility needs. So does that mean that we need to start earmarking money in the budget to increase into Parks and Rec for establishing a better program or an enhanced program for seniors? Or is that money already allocated in the funds already?
Yeah, so we already have money going towards seniors and programming, but it's kind of lumped into the bigger programming budget. Okay. And I know even a recent conversation I had with the mayor is like, how do we break that out so we can see how much money is going directly for it?
Yes, sir.
And then if, when we go through that budget process, if we, through the needs assessment and even getting your feedback, do we increase that to be more targeted, right? And so the answer is yes. And we want to make sure it's broken out as we move into the next budget cycle and even the budget document, so that people can see that is there. Because right now, some of our seniors can feel that we're committing time, but I think it needs to be more evident.
Yes,
and so it will be yes, and it's a yes and. Yep.
I think if you also break it out, it gives you more opportunities for grants as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
First of all, Tina, thank you and great job, because 30% and 50% of your time is a lot. So thank you for that. I think it's great that's being pointed out today so that everybody understands and knows that it is being worked on and has been in the plan. I'm sorry that Michael wasn't here today to hear this, because I know this is very near and dear to his heart. but I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that you already have a plan and that there are already some next steps laid out as well. So I'm excited about it, and I know that the seniors in town are excited about it, and people my age, I'll admit it, happy to see more programs coming, you know, in town. Volleyball is always good. Not saying that I would try to be on a team, but I might. But anyway, I'm glad that you pointed this out today, because I think it's important that we do know what's embedded in those numbers and pull out some of these things for us to see. So thanks. Good job.
Comment? Yeah, comment? I'll echo a little bit of what April said. I think you guys, especially Tina, I've been to a lot of events she's done. You guys do an excellent job, and I think you have too. You take a lot of credit for this, I believe, June, because I believe this statement. Board may not, but I believe this statement. If you hadn't came on board, I don't think we'd be where we're at today. I mean, you've done a great job of taking nothing and turning it into something that's really good, and I want to thank you personally for that, because
But Mayor, I cannot take all the credit.
You got an excellent team, sir.
It's the staff. It's the staff.
Teamwork.
But it does take teamwork, but a great organization has to have a great leader.
Thank you.
And I think, your leadership in this organization is kind of where it's been. I want to kind of thank you for that. Second thing is, have y'all talked to the resources for seniors at all yet? Have you gone that far to reach out to them? And that's a Wake County group that's been around for 50. Eric knows them, and they're involved with just about all of them. I know Wake Forest and Apex and East Wake Senior. They're involved in all those centers and helping funding through Wake County.
Right.
So we don't have to do it alone. So at some point in time with your plan, I think you need to bring in them as a partner, start talking about, and maybe Eric, you've thought about that, because they've been around for 50 years and they've done a ton of these things, and I'm not sure how many they got, probably a dozen around the county.
And so we have, to answer your question, we have not met with them yet. I've met with staff at Wake County, and I've also met with Central Ponds that have let me know what their direction is. And so the goal was for us to complete this draft and then be able to bring that to them to see how they can partner with the plan, the vision that we have for our particular aging community experience. But I am aware of that they are kind of shifting in their direction from managing senior centers to being it, but funding, and then because we've seen that transition happen in Wendell, and then also most recently in Wake Forest, where they're not necessarily providing or funding staffing, but they are continuing to provide the funding to support senior programming. We're trying to get creative in how we can partner, because they target more so stand-up senior centers and provide funding to a senior center. And I think by us moving to carve out more time within our community center and be more targeted and show them that we have these windows and these concrete programming, and also show our successes with our senior expo and things of that nature, we'll be able to find opportunities to bring them to partner with.
I think
so. That's our next step. But getting your feedback and kind of getting the plan together, and then having some just general high level like brainstorming conversations with them is the next thing we have on our
and I don't know, June, once you meet with them, anything in your plan would be adapted. Because really, Eric is right. I think, kind of observing, it used to be Wake County ran it, Wake County Senior Citizen Program. Then they went to this kind of nonprofit thing called Resources for Seniors, but Wake County still provides them a ton of funding. I actually fund the whole thing just about. But really in the last few years, they never really done a lot of facilities, construction and buildings, that mostly the town, but they did manage it. And I think they're getting out of both of those things, actually construction and managing people, people managing. But they offer a lot of services.
Yes.
So that's where you would partner with them. They would provide the services and expertise, and it's a lot of wellness that gets involved with senior citizen centers now. And I don't know if you thought about that or not, but it's wellness stuff that they do a lot of that stuff and all too.
Yeah, currently we actually we have a bunch of seniors from the Wake Forest Senior Center that we talk to a lot, who come down and help us do some of our our activities. Matter of fact, Crokinole, they have come in and helped us get that set up and doing it. So, as well as, oh my gosh, what's the one in Raleigh behind the big building? I can't think of the coordinator there. Her name is Allie, and she helps out a lot with Tina. She's giving her information and stuff as well that they are doing with their trips and so forth, in which that's where Tina got a lot of her stuff from them as well. So basically, that's what we do. We just reach out to people who had the senior centers and who had stuff already up going and to try to build off what they already have.
That's great. I think y'all making a lot of progress, and I'm really, as April said, happy here to plan and continue to do that. Great job. Come a long ways in 2 years, June, so appreciate that. One last question.
Yes.
This, what is it called, Crokinole?
Crokinole.
How's your game on that? Is your game getting better? Last time I saw you, you were struggling a little bit.
I'm getting it pretty good now, man. As a matter of fact, Thursday, right, Tina? Thursday, hey, come to the community center. We will have Crokinole this Thursday from 11 o'clock. Please come and join us.
So you're getting the game on then?
Yes, I'm getting it on. I'm ready. And matter of fact, I'm going to challenge you, Mayor.
Okay.
On Thursday. How about that?
Well, so I'm a novice. So it sounds like you've been practicing for a while now.
No, I haven't.
Thanks, Gene. Appreciate it. All right, good. We go into a new business. We got a couple of legislative hearings we're continuing. One is a comprehensive plan for 2020-50, and I think Greg and Daniel's here, so you guys can come up. And Mike, if you want to be involved, y'all come on up. We continue this from last meeting, and we really didn't get into the legislative hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and officially open the hearing, and I will take any type of presentation or report from the staff or the consultant on this plan.
I would just like to introduce item 5A on the agenda. It is the presentation by Withers Ravenel and Rose and Associates of the Rolesville Comprehensive Plan 2050 update. I'll turn it immediately over to Greg.
Okay, well, while I get set up, good evening, Mayor, members of the board. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight, and I fully recognize I have the unique opportunity of discussing a topic, this piece of work, the Rolesville 2050 Comprehensive Plan, that very closely ties to your previous two presentations, both covering topics on getting the seniors within the community more involved, as well as improving the flow and translation of development process to the community. So both topics that this comprehensive plan certainly covers, well, it's in the name, a comprehensive plan. So without spoiling my presentation anymore, I will go ahead and get my screen share here set up. I do want to take a moment again to introduce myself, although I know we all have met throughout this project. My name is Greg Feldman. I'm a project manager and planner by trade and education with Withers Ravenel. Our firm, our planning team within our firm works on long-range planning documents, including transportation plans, comprehensive plans throughout the state of North Carolina. And tonight I'm also joined by our sub-consultant on this effort who assisted with the economic development portions of this plan. Probably a name and a face that you all know, Ms. Kathleen Rose, who has a portion of this presentation as well. Okay, we're all set up. And so I have prepared just a brief agenda to help guide our conversation this evening, not intending to follow this agenda very closely because I do hope that you all stop me if you have any questions regarding any piece of information that I discussed this evening. But I do want to recap the last 12 to 14 months that all led to creating what you have before you this evening, which is the Rolesville 2050 Comprehensive Plan in its entirety. So I do want to go back through the schedule, at least through a conceptual view of some of the key milestones along the way. And we're also going to recap some community engagement events that took place throughout the process. So not just our various opportunities meeting the community where they were, such as last year's Fall Fun Fest. I know that event's coming up again this year, very awesome event. I'm going to talk about some of our engagement with the community there, as well as 2 other open houses and a community survey, as well as different involvement and engagements with various stakeholders and focus groups as part of this project to collect that community feedback. I'm then going to talk about the guiding rails of this document, which is the community vision statement formed by interactions we had with the community, and ultimately talk about our 4 different focus areas of this planning document and some of the recommendations within it that'll be used as staff and as you all as elected officials, and as well as the planning board as appointed, to begin topics of conversation and begin to bring some of these recommendations to life. In other words, implement them. So I do have a slide dedicated to that portion, next steps, if you will. As I mentioned, I'm going to pass my presentation over to Ms. Kathleen Rose with Rose and Associates to discuss some of the concurrency of economic development themes and ideas that have made their way into this plan and play certainly an important role as you all go to implement this work. And then we're going to talk about probably a component I would be willing to guess is most closely understood, or at least referred to within a comprehensive plan, and that is the future land use map. So we're going to spend 2 slides that are dedicated to the future land use map and talk about how it was created, some of the different flavors of future land use, and how it will ultimately be used by you all, as elected officials. As I mentioned, we're going to wrap up with talking about how to use this document and next steps as well. Okay, so I won't belabor this slide because I did have a chance to introduce myself. Again, Greg Feldman served as the planner lead and co-project manager on this effort with my colleague Daniel Rao, also a planner with Withers Ravenel, our community planning team, and joined with me this evening Kathleen Rose and Daniel Bello, who works with Kathleen closely at Rose and Associates. So now I'd like to conceptualize the project schedule. I recognize if I had inserted a slide that was dedicated to the complex Excel schedule of the last 14 months, it would probably be tough to follow. So I've broken it out here just in 6 milestones. I want to take us all the way back to last fall. So we're talking about roughly 13 months ago when this project kicked off, and actually myself and Daniel Rao came in this room, although a different color I think at the time, and had the chance to present to you all really how this process was intended to flow. Why was there a need to update the 2017 plan? What data were we going to use to get started, and how we planned on interacting with the community? In other words, what was our engagement plan for the project? So that took us back to last fall. That allowed us to really dive into the numerous plans and relevant documents, planning level documents such as Greenway plans, of course the 2017 plan, the strategic plan, all because, again, as I mentioned, a comprehensive plan, it is the job of a comprehensive plan to tie all of these various planning efforts that the town has spent a great deal of energy and, quite frankly, money and has invested in these specialized documents that cover topics, as I mentioned, such as transportation, parks and recreation, land use and housing. The job of a comprehensive plan is to tie those documents together and to make sure they're talking to one another. And so really what this comprehensive plan, my bias take, of course, and opinion, is that this comprehensive plan has achieved that and has certainly allowed those plans to communicate with one another effectively, so that you do have now a one-stop shop to refer to all of these different past planning efforts. And of course, to pull relevant ideas and projects from those different documents forward. Maybe find new ways that at the time they were created didn't necessarily consider, find new and innovative ways to move some relevant topics from those documents forward. So again, reviewing past planning efforts as well as data. There was a large data collection portion of this project at the beginning as well. And when I talk about data, we're talking about population data, demographic data in general, housing data, but also GIS data. So it's important to understand different pieces of geographic information systems data at the county level and at the city of Raleigh level, understanding with utility agreement in place. You know, we'd like to know to make the most informed land use recommendations where utilities are planned, where they exist, right? And what maybe are roadway capacities to help us begin to draw preliminary lines on a future land use map or map. But it's important to understand existing conditions through that data that we received and collected at the beginning of this project. So these next two blocks here, I'll kind of sum them up in one statement, and that was a chance for us to get boots on the ground in the community and start hearing the priority list from citizens of Rolesville, right? So in other words, let's launch a community survey to understand kind of where priorities sit in terms of future land use and land use topics as a whole. And that allowed us to really begin formulating a vision statement, which would ultimately guide the remainder of the creation of this planning document. And so that dark navy blue fourth block here on the timeline was when we were able to kind of collect all of those pieces of information, including, looks like I have a pop-up here, but including that background data we collected, the previous planning efforts data, blend all of that information together with findings from community engagement events and the community survey, and actually start to assemble the plan so that we got that document, that draft document, to a point where it was ready to be showcased to the community for their feedback once more. And so that's led us to this evening. What a year it's been. And I also will mention later on, but this document was also presented to the planning board at their last formal meeting, and we'll talk about that more. So I won't touch on that too much for now. And I do feel it's important to highlight some of the engagement that took place. Probably, I would be willing to guess these pictures look familiar to you all, and certainly appreciate your all's attendance and support in general for this effort. Everyone from staff to you all elected, and of course our appointed officials, spreading the word on these different engagement events assisted with the turnout we received. But I want to take us back again to last October at the Fall Fun Fest event. I'll state it again, I hope I can make it November 1st, I think it is. That event was a blast. We had a wonderful opportunity to leverage foot traffic, which I think is very, very critical as part of any, I'll just say for any public planning process and community engagement process. If you have numerous opportunities to engage with the public, you should make every effort to try and meet people where they are, which is what we did at last year's Fall Fun Fest. That allowed us to hear from folks who probably didn't wake up and were, knew they were attending the Fall Fun Fest event, probably didn't anticipate sharing their thoughts on the future of Rolesville looking through a 25-year lens, right? That probably wasn't in their cards when they got out of bed that morning. Those are the type of interactions where you get that real in-person data and kind of real honest feedback from community members when you're able to have face-to-face meaningful conversation with them when they didn't anticipate it maybe. So I'm going to take us now from that Fall Fun Fest event. We got some reassurance of ideas and some of our initial findings, some of the topics that we felt based on our research from past planning efforts and data collected. We received some reassurance of different topics relating to land use, housing, parks and recreation. We confirmed our thoughts with the community, but there were also new ideas shared with us, such as more transportation options for seniors. Actually, verbatim, very much a topic brought up throughout this comprehensive land use plan conversation. So following that October Fall Fun Fest event, that was an opportunity again to recap for us to present kind of what the process looks like, what some of the data looks like that we've already collected, and kind of what to expect from here. Well, that June community open house was an opportunity for us to take information not only from the Fall Fun Fest event, but from the community survey that was launched between October and January, and present our 10 big ideas of this comprehensive plan, right? So we were able to say, hey, citizens of Rolesville, this is what we heard from you all. Did we get it right? Right. So we can continue making progress on diving deeper into these topics and ultimately producing recommendations that will be implementable by the community and of course have the community's support. So that June open house was an opportunity for us to do just that. And not too long ago, just flashback to August, it was an opportunity for us in this room to actually roll out the draft plan in its entirety. So actually at that event, we received a good turnout at that event. I know some of you all were able to join us. We actually had, and you can't necessarily make them out in this photo, but we actually had each plan recommendation listed and an opportunity for participants, attendees that evening to place a dot, interact with those boards in that material, and actually place a preference dot on the different priority level they felt a particular action item belonged at. So in other words, and it was explained at that time, but in other words, folks were able to prioritize recommendations, right? Which certainly made its way into the plan. It was stated at that event and certainly mentioned throughout the document. We understand as planners, as folks who are involved with budgeting and involved with work with local governments, if everything's a high priority, nothing's a high priority. So certainly understood that. And for the most part, I think our attendees that evening and all participants throughout the project understood that as well. So what that led us to avoid was having a laundry list of recommendations, all intended to be short-term recommendations and implemented within the next 1 to 3 years. That's certainly not the case, but staggered out different plan recommendations that can be correlated with fiscal years, but we staggered out different recommendations based on some of that feedback as well, and of course project and professional experience through different different implementation timelines. So talked about community engagement quite a bit, but what ultimately all of our conversations led to was a single vision statement that I'll actually take a second to read verbatim to you all, but a single vision statement that, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, set the guide rails for the remainder of the creation of this document. And that Rolesville 2050 vision statement reads, in 2050, the town of Rolesville is a vibrant, walkable community that serves as a regional destination. The town is interconnected by a network of greenways and trails that will allow access to the community's homes, parks, and entertainment options. Town growth has been strategically directed to supply a balance of residential and non-residential and civic services to ensure that the community provides its residents with a live, work, play lifestyle, something that we heard quite a bit as a priority from the community we interacted with. And lastly, all are welcome in Rolesville, and the community's diversity and people are celebrated through annual events. And again, just to reiterate, so what that vision statement was basically a summary in 6 sentences of all of the different engagement and touch points that we had with the community wrapped up into one paragraph. And what it ultimately did was help us distill even further and begin to basket conversations we had, organize, categorize conversations, however you'd like to phrase it, that we had with the community, into 4 different focus areas. And that was the transportation focus area, so we're not just talking about necessarily the roadways in Rolesville, but how folks get around from a walkability standpoint as well. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. Economic development areas, that was a specific focus area in this document, which we brought along a specialist in that realm, Ms. Kathleen Rose, who will talk a little bit more about the economic development focus area in just a minute. Land use and housing, certainly, so we're talking about land use and housing, we're talking about the built environment. So certainly discussing not just new residential projects and townhomes, how do we guide future growth in that respect from a residential standpoint, but we're also talking about context-sensitive infill on important vacant pieces of property in and around the community. And lastly, but certainly not least, these are in no particular order, parks, recreation, and community character. So we're going to talk about themes we heard from that topic, from that focus area in just a bit. But certainly one of the most emerging themes, and actually ranked as the #1 most important quality of life, really contributor to quality of life from our community survey, was ensuring preservation of natural spaces and recreational amenities as the community continues to grow. So that was the #1 actually survey response in terms of what do folks cherish most about the Rolesville community. And so underneath of these focus areas, so I think I'm hopefully doing an okay job and happy to go back and explain anything in deeper detail. But underneath of these 4 different focus areas, we have individual plan recommendations that can be used as a roadmap, as a bulleted list, if you will, for staff to bring forward and for future development proposals to consider, are we accomplishing these different recommendations within these focus areas of the comprehensive plan. And so just to give a few examples of these different recommendations, what they look like, underneath of our Rolesville 2050 transportation focus area, we have one specific recommendation that is to strategically update the town's LDO to limit driveways onto Main Street. So I'll dive into that one just for a second, and I'll try not to be long-winded with the rest, and hope my laptop does not die, and I'm sure I have an opportunity to charge it here somewhere, and I have a charger in my bag. But strategically limit driveways on Main Street, so that avoids, that solves a multitude of problems, but what it does is avoid congestion and unnecessary pileup from folks backing out or making frequent turns. I apologize for the inconvenience here, but I'm going to hopefully find a charger. I have a charger right here. Just give me 1 moment. We are going to get this show back on the road one way or another. Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, no. We might have just shut down, didn't we? Okay, well, my apologies, but we'll get back up and going in just a moment. I want to make sure I have these slides printed out, but I want to make sure we're all looking at this material together. Well, I knew I'd try to make this presentation entertaining, and I think I'm succeeding in that right now. That might be a first. It knew your part was coming up, so it wanted to shut it down for me. Should be getting going. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Okay. And while I'm pulling things up, shouldn't take too long. Any questions on some of the material that I've covered so far, or probably certainly reserve time at the end of our PowerPoint to talk about things in more detail, should there be a need. Sure.
Which of these areas that you had showed us in transportation, land use, parks and rec, and economic development, which one you think should be prioritized for our upcoming capital or strategic planning cycles?
It's a good question. We even make mention within the document that the order of these focus areas is somewhat irrelevant because they all hold their different significance. I think the real indicator, looks like we're getting back online, of how to prioritize these different focus areas is within the recommendations themselves. So I mentioned, actually at the tail end of this plan, there's a matrix, an implementation matrix that has every recommendation included. And actually within that matrix, there is a implementation timeframe column that states the priority level, or in other words, the timeline on which it's intended to be implemented. So that would be I guess the way of putting it, there are recommendations in each of these 4 categories that are intended to be short-term implemented, so high priority. I hope that
Yes, sir, it does.
answers somewhat. And Michael, I didn't even think, but you may have a backup presentation, so I'm just getting online. How about one more Hail Mary? think we did it. All right, thank you all so much for bearing with me. Really apologize for that. Okay. And so moving on, I think we were at our transportation focus area and talking about some of that strategic limiting of driveways, which of course is an LDO-related item, a text amendment, which I know you all at this board is familiar with. Want to move on to the third that you see here, which is land use and housing, that particular focus area. And I think I mentioned this recommendation just a little bit ago, but this specific thought and idea of prioritizing context-sensitive infill downtown, particularly the Main Street corridor, was not just included in here because we all as a project team, staff included in us at Withers, Ravenel, and Rose and Associates felt it was important. It was one that the community holds to a high standard, right? I think our job constantly as a planner and throughout this piece of work is taking some of these thoughts and conversations that we have with the community in understanding here's the best route based on what your kind of aspiration for creating a vibrant Main Street corridor, which the town is already making great strides to do. Here's, to put it in planner speak, right, here's how that is accomplished. And in other words, when we're talking about context-sensitive infill, particularly downtown, Rolesville along Main Street, they're not making any more vacant property downtown. And so when a undeveloped parcel or maybe even a previously developed parcel and a repurposed one moves forward, you want to make sure it's compatible for a lot of reasons from an aesthetic standpoint, but also that you don't cause adverse effects on neighboring properties downtown that have taken a chance and invested in a business or startup or restaurant in the community. So in other words, encourage new infill as always. Encourage new infill, especially in your downtown area, but let's be picky and maybe not picky, but let's ensure and be strategic about what it looks like when it moves forward. And so that's that way of saying context-sensitive infill, prioritizing it. And now on to, before I pass it over, to talk about some of the parks and recreation and greenways themes. Actually, when we started this project too, I think the town certainly deserves a lot of credit for starting to become known in the triangle, really, and in the region as a whole, as a community that's developing an identity around recreation. Particularly with respect to the amount of greenway planning and actually greenway infrastructure Rolesville's been fortunate enough to get on the ground. And so this focus area as a whole, and you would be surprised there are other communities that very much so struggle with that very topic. And that is the topic of providing folks access to things, places and things without getting in a car. So you all are known for making successful strides for that. And so our job and our goal with this focus area, not being totally greenway centric, was to figure out ways we can continue that kind of theme and recognition for being a community that is building an identity around recreation. One particular recommendation from this focus area was to develop kind of a parkland acquisition policy that identifies and supports future park locations. So how that is tied to greenways, it's tied to it in a few different ways. But something that a parkland acquisition policy would look at is, of the existing parks within the community, how accessible are they by foot, by bike? And from that visual, and this is just a component of an acquisition policy, but I wanted to make the connection to greenways as well. Of that visual, how accessible are parks via foot and bicycle? You're able to identify gaps, right? And so that can serve as a pretty good starting point, at least for a conversation and within a, maybe in the form of an acquisition policy on where we might look for future parkland, pocket parks, or just a recreational amenity in general to kind of continue this theme of Rolesville's walkable. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it now to Ms. Kathleen Rose to talk about specifically our economic development focus area, but also just economic development themes that are included within this plan as well. So I'll pass it over to you, just briefly, Kathleen, and I'll stand up here as well.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, welcome, Kathleen.
Can you just put the next slide up here?
Sure
I
can.
don't know which button. I don't dare
Oh,
touch
no.
his computer.
I already broke it once.
I have one slide, so I'm not gonna ramble on too long, but I know in the interest of time, because you have another presentation behind it. But my journey with Rolesville began around 2016 with the Main Street Corridor Study. And that was a transportation-led plan, and I supported the lead consultant on that. And we looked at real estate markets and understanding the background of how land use and real estate impacts the road. Fast forward to 2018, I worked with the community on doing an economic development strategic plan. So from transportation and real estate into the economic development piece. And we had three big key themes for that 2018 plan. It was invest in the future. It was build for the future, create community to attract talent, and market to build the local economy. 2018, Rolesville was a very different place than it is now. And you all were really striving to identify commercial areas, to not have the bypass totally, be to the detriment of your Main Street, and focus on making Main Street viable. And we identified certain key areas there. So it was about building and building out commercial real estate as well as housing pieces, and to enhance the livability and lifestyle of Rolesville. Create community to attract talent. It was all about attracting folks to the community, which obviously, fast forward, you've all really accomplished quite a bit since 2018. And then to market, to build a local economy. So you now have had several projects come in since that 2018 plan. Things are happening. I was thrilled to ride up and down Main Street and see all that was going on. It's almost like you had the cake, we had to put the icing on the cake. Now this plan will help decorate the cake to fill in the details of that. So the key themes going forward are invest in the future, and that's about adding amenities. And this ties back to your strategic plan in terms of amenitizing the community, preserving the quality of life, because the unintended consequences of success are traffic, parking issues, and all the things you hear people lamenting about. Let's close the gates, we don't want any more development. Those kinds of things start happening. So we want to make sure that you continue to focus on that quality of life, and you're doing a good job with that. And then balancing the local economy. What we discovered is that economic balance between residential development and commercial development impacts your fiscal impacts. And unfortunately, we've kind of moved in the wrong direction. You've grown quite a bit commercially, but you've also grown exponentially more residentially. So that number ratio has slid backwards. So now the focus is, let's start to take a look at commercial opportunities to help rebalance that vision. And that's about creating jobs and employment opportunities and the development of what land you have left. You're a bit of an island in terms of being limited physically with some of the geography that you have here, the bypass, Wake Forest, et cetera. So, you're a bit of an island. So the lands that are left to be developed really need to be thought through strategically to make sure you're balancing that. So we focused on the 401 gateway during this process to really take a look at pre-positioning sites for development for employment and commercial uses, and public-private partnerships. So that's going to become, ultimately the most important thing to focus on in terms of the land use from our perspective and from an economic development perspective. And I think that we had more detail. We provided a framework of a work plan to Michael McFarland, who then can fill in the details of that, because we didn't want to get so deep into the economic development piece, because this is really a land use plan. And the land use plan is a vision. It has to follow with a regulating document. and then your policies around how you're going to make those decisions. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kathleen, and we'll both be available at the conclusion of this presentation, which I just have a few more slides to get through, one of which is very closely related, to that concept of establishing specific areas for intended land use. So what you have before you on the screen, 3 different screenshots, all from the Rolesville 2050 Comprehensive Plan. On the left-hand side, probably a tool within this document, as I mentioned at the start of this evening, that's most commonly referred to, or at least very well known as a component of a comprehensive land use plan, and that's the future land use map. So the official future land use map of the community, that includes 11 different flavors of land use. So ranging from the 401 gateway designation, where we're centered around talking about creating opportunities for job-generating uses, non-residential commercial job-generating uses, all the way to this kind of bright red color at the very center of town, probably hard to make it out, but you certainly can on that map next to it, the downtown future land use designation. So within each of these future land use cut sheets, is what we refer to them as in the plan, you have a full 2-page spread dedicated to what area specifically are we referring to when we talk about this downtown designation? What's the description? In other words, what's really the understanding of how this character area, future land use designation, if you will, is intended to look? What are some of the design considerations? So we're touching topics here such as parking, shared bicycle parking and infrastructure. We're also talking about model uses. So what kind of land uses are appropriate, and on the opposite side of the conversation, maybe what uses are inappropriate in this designation. And then also another 2 more attributes, one for compatible zoning, so we're tying it to the LDO. What zoning designations are most compatible and consistent with this downtown future land use designation? In the town's case, in the LDO's case, the town center TC designation, of course, would fit that mold. And then lastly, we also have a space, a criteria, if you will, dedicated to additional economic development considerations. So this is how the future land use chapter within the document looks. I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss that further. And so last but not least, the comprehensive plan from here is of course no one's in the industry to create shelf-written documents. This is a powerful tool that's intended to be used by not only you all as elected officials, not only staff, not just the planning board, but also the community and prospective development. So when a project moves forward, just as they do currently, one piece of data and information they dive into as part of their due diligence is certainly the comprehensive plan. So not just the plan's future land use map that we just talked about, but also different recommendations so that, hopefully the intent is, and certainly the question that will be asked on the town side is, okay, what kind of boxes or what recommendations are you acknowledging and moving forward as part of this project that we have made sure to mention and have understood to become important ideas within our comprehensive plan? What are you moving forward as part of this proposal? So that's a conversation that's certainly intended to take place. But talking about this board's role, certainly I understand you all have familiarity, a great deal of familiarity in making land use decisions. A tough spot, certainly, to be in at times. The hope is that this document, which is a community reflective document, can give you all some reassurance when considering compatibility with the future land use map, aka when a project moves forward, just as you all do currently, how does this project comply, or how is it consistent is a better word to use, with the downtown future land use designation. So we'll look at the design criteria, the design elements within that, specific future land use designation and ensure that there is some compatibility there. If not, which is sometimes the case, I know you all as a board have had to make a decision on a land use application, a development submittal, where it wasn't consistent with the future land use map, but maybe logically it made sense. It just wasn't one area that was considered. That happens. And that is part of the reason why a comprehensive plan also has other areas of consideration within it, AKA the focus areas, the 4 focus areas we talked about, and all of the recommendations underneath that. So kind of 2 ways to think about evaluating a development submittal. 1, is it consistent with the future land use map and why? 2, if not, but it does seem to be consistent with some of the surrounding land uses or maybe even a development trend that's taking place after the adoption of this land use plan. What recommendations, we'll go to our recommendations matrix, what recommendations is this project moving forward or at least considering and addressing? So kind of a two-stop shop in terms of what to evaluate and consider as part of a future decision on an application. So that's kind of that second bullet. To talk about the first briefly, as you all already do, this is nothing new, but this is etched within the comprehensive plan now. Regular coordination with other boards, including, of course, the planning board, is always encouraged, as I know this board does, but also staff being the subject matter experts in the planning and development world, and of course the general public, which I think we already discussed this evening prior to our presentation, allowing for more transparency in the development review and submittal process to avoid what I think everyone is going through these days, which can be misinformation that gets spread, right? So just continuing to work with those different representatives of the community and start implementing this comprehensive plan. So that wraps us up for the most part. This is my final slide before I turn it over to you all for any questions that you may have of us and the project team. As I mentioned at the end of August at the planning board's official meeting, we did receive unanimous planning board a recommendation for approval. Tonight we are seeking formal adoption of this board for the Rolesville 2050 comprehensive land use plan. And last but not least, start implementing some of the recommendations within this document. I'll mention, just to close us out, there was, if you all are able to go back and watch the planning board meeting, we fielded questions at that evening as well. And a lot of the conversation took place around kind of how the future land use map was shaped and how it was intended to function. And so we explained what I did on the previous slide to that board as well. So that was the main point of conversation with the planning board on the 25th. But yes. And that will wrap us up this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure working with the community over the last 14 months to shape this plan. Certainly feel very confident and strong about some of the ideas that were captured within this document, and excited to continue to stay plugged in on how success with implementation goes. So thank you for your time this evening. Apologize for the technical issues as well, but happy to stick around and answer any questions that you all have, and thank you again.
Yeah, any questions for Greg?
I don't have any questions. It was a very detailed document.
Very.
I read through that and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think you've missed anything. And I really, the chart that you were telling Dan about at the Commissioner Alston at the end, as I was reading through it, I was like, okay, what are next steps for all this stuff? And so that chart was very helpful, I think, especially how you prioritize everything to highlight and lower priorities. I appreciated that, and I'm looking forward to see how and where we start implementing.
Thank you.
I got a couple questions, Greg. One, if I was looking at the future land use map, it's mostly everything in there is ETJ or town corporate limits, right? And I thought we talked about, see, here's a problem that happens here, is a lot of these farms, they're shopped by single family places, a lot of them are shopped by, the corporate builders. You know, they knock on the door every day almost. And they come to us with a subdivision, which we may vision something else going there. So if it's not in our corporate limits and it's not in our ETJ, I know we don't have direct control over it, but I thought we could have suggestions somehow that this area we want, if it does come under our jurisdiction, we want something other than single family. But I didn't see that. Is that something we can accomplish?
It is, yes, sir. And actually, apologize for glossing over it perhaps, but because we certainly took that conversation into account, this plan stretches beyond the extraterritorial jurisdiction. So we actually take a look. This map on the left-hand side of the screen is inclusive of the town's corporate limits, its ETJ, and 2 miles outside of its corporate limits as well.
But it's got a lot of green in there.
It has a lot of green.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And it's a lot of green that we would, I think they're going to come as subdivisions if we not declare, because the planning department has no idea. You know, they come to them and there's no idea what our future use would be on those the green areas is what I'm talking about. It's a lot of green area.
Sure. And certainly acknowledging that large green swath of land east of kind of the Rolesville, Averett, Young corridor. We're designated, that property has been designated as rural residential and agriculture. So if I may just throw a hypothetical scenario of a potential annexation and rezoning, and I'll try to condense this because I could probably go on about it. But let's say within understanding a lot of it's the watershed, right? At least east.
Some of it, not all of it.
Some of it, yes, sir. So when we're looking at a parcel, let's say in this green area, which is designated as rural residential and agriculture, intended for very, very extremely low-dense, single-family home, we're talking about a unit to an acre, which is unheard of in nowadays, especially with respect to the larger corporate home building companies out there. Let's say we have an annexation in that designation. Understanding utilities may be a constraint. A future developer comes in and proposes hey, I want to annex into the town of Rolesville. I also want to conditionally rezone this property to provide for a mix of townhouses.
Happens all the time.
Yep, exactly. So to provide for a mix of townhouses and single-family homes.
All the time.
It certainly does. And, you know, I want 200 units. We'll just throw that number out there. Well, now, with that property coming in, it will consider, one of the pieces of consideration will be this rural residential and agricultural designation, which will certainly be inconsistent with the proposal at hand. So we've got a kind of, we'll call it a moderate to medium, you know, even high density in some cases, rezoning and proposal that's in this green area. Well, that's not consistent with the future land use map and designation. So as part of, we can call it negotiation and conversation with that developer, we can say, well, this is completely inconsistent with what we have marked the future land use map here to include. What different recommendations, such as balancing a commercial and residential ratio, are you bringing forward? Are you thinking about including any commercial pieces in this property, or we're just talking about single family and townhomes over here? So because it's inconsistent with the future land use map, you're able to dive into other areas of interest in this comprehensive plan, such as the topic around economic development, and say, well, we're gonna have to meet in the middle somewhere to consider this project. And maybe that compromise or that agreement is, well, we're going to need to see some mix of uses out here in this area because you are inconsistent with the future land use map. So apologize, I said I would be short-winded,
That's
but
good.
just wanted to, because I know that situation exactly happens quite a bit. You have an annexation that comes in, and maybe it's in Wake County's jurisdiction. It's in the unincorporated county. And so you all have not considered a future land use there. You haven't considered land use as a whole there, but the county has. Well, they're coming to Rolesville for other benefits, right? And so now this just provides a little more leverage, I feel, on the town side to have those conversations and really negotiations, I think, is the way to put it, to phrase it, with future developers in the community and say, hey, we're going to need, we recognize that, you want to come into the town. We're willing to have a conversation, but we're going to have to talk about some of these topics related to our comprehensive plans, such as economic development, transportation concepts, and your project will need to consider those areas too.
Yeah.
If I might chime in, part of the discussion on the land use.
Come up here so the public can hear you.
Just to add some additional thoughts on that, is part of the discussion from a real estate standpoint is what is the suitability of all of these sites? Because as mentioned, a lot of this area in green is in the watershed. So that creates some limitations in terms of development. And when you start getting out into Wake County, that has limitations in terms of commercial uses in the watershed, et cetera. So, there are some other guide rails that are involved there to help you make that decision. And it's not just the watershed. A lot of the land, the soils and topography can be challenging as well. So when we look at highest and best use, that looks at not only the financial feasibility, but the physical feasibility, the legal feasibility, and all those areas that will help give you some guardrails in terms of making land use decisions to stick with really having the fortitude to enable your comprehensive land use plan and sometimes you have to say no. And that can be a difficult, decision. But this is really a guide and a vision document to help you to be able to do that. But it takes into account the economic development, the fiscal, and the physical limitations that you might have.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Thank you. This may be helpful. We'll just have to see, but most farms make good housing developments. and that's what they target as farmers and their farms. The wooded areas, it's a grab, but some of it is not suitable, rock and streams and everything else. But if it's a farm, the developers are talking to those farmers every day and trying to convince them to put a subdivision there with 5 to 6 units per acre with some townhouses and stuff.
Well, and we had this discussion, an issue in another community in a rural county with, just how do we help the farmers be able to maximize their valuation and potential without having to have a high-density residential to make more money? And part of that is looking at alternative, like things like cluster developments, conservation developments, which some folks would want to live in, like what they call it, agrihoods and mini farms, where they'd be willing to pay, to have a 5-acre piece or a 2-acre piece or a 3-acre piece to have a little mini farm to raise their children and have chickens in the yard. And those are becoming more and more popular. And what we're finding is those valuations are coming in, pretty high. So that can help balance that versus just covering it with a high density subdivision. So we have to find ways for farmers to be able to, to get the benefit that they would without compromising or sacrificing what your vision is for the future.
Yeah, we want some workforce stuff. We want some, I guess you'd call it innovation and business parks and all that kind of things. And all we get in is subdivisions because that's what they convince the farmer they can sell them so much per acre.
And that's the importance of that's the importance of this. And we did have conversations with some of the large landowners as part of this process and imparted, the importance of, different types of development and what the opportunities could be.
Yeah. Well, thanks. One last question, Greg. You mentioned the downtown or Main Street as infill, and you suggested the planning department look at that. But it's a little bit more than just infill. It's redevelopment. I mean, we got a lot of old buildings, a lot of houses that need to be redeveloped to maybe to commercial and stuff like that. And we actually need new zoning to be able to do that. And, we got one building right now, the guy tore this two-story building, he tore the whole building down except for cinder blocks. And he had to leave cinder blocks there because he can't build another building there. He has to redo that building, and it was much more expensive and half the size it could have been by redoing it. But we need, was that in there? I didn't see it in there. Was that in there?
It was, and I think also very, very good question, something that was discussed. Hey, infill is not, as it's provided here in context, it's not intended to just take into account vacant lots as they're redeveloped. It's also talking about adaptive reuse of buildings and structures. And so one of those 11 flavors I mentioned in the future land use map,
Mm-hmm.
I think I had it. Yep. So one of those 11 different flavors, 2 are almost an overlay future land use designation, which I know sounds like planners have gone crazy a little bit.
Lawyer likes it.
Right. Well, we're talking about an overlay on a future land use map. I wouldn't say it's very uncommon, but there was a particular need with downtown, respect to downtown. So what we established as part of this project was an additional future land use designation called the Downtown Opportunity Zone. And within that opportunity zone, specifically what you're mentioning, we're talking about making the most use out of existing structures as well, to ensure they're not just new buildings, but to ensure existing ones as they're remodeled and upfitted are also compatible with the neighbors, right? And the overall theme of downtown. So that, I'm glad you mentioned it, because that was also something brought up throughout this process as well, outside of this evening.
Yeah, and with that is a need for public parking and that type of thing. So,
Parking was also another topic that we made sure we covered in the form of a recommendation specifically for that conversation downtown. It was also included within the considerations of this plan.
I want to just echo, thank you, Michael. Michael worked very hard on this. Also, planning department, Mike and his group, y'all worked very hard, and all the consultants did too. So great job. I think probably covered 99% of what we kind of wanted. Maybe not exactly the way we envisioned. I think this Wake County, it wasn't Wake County, it was state, put a moratorium on our ETJ, because that was one of the parts we were going to come out of here with recommendations for ETJ, and we didn't do that. I think we got to wait 3 years. 3 years, ain't it, Attorney? I think it's 3 years.
Yes.
We got to wait 3 years to do that. But some of this unprotected land, I would like to see us, designate what we want on there rather than what we ended up having to do.
And I'd just like to say, as you mentioned, Commissioner Sneed, this document has a lot of text. It's a lot of information within it. The hope is that how it was crafted was done in an organized way. I hope that you all, as well as the public, found that to be the case. Because to your point, Mayor Curran, we hope 99% of the bases in terms of a visioning plan and future land use, talking about future land use here out through a 25-year lens, we're hoping these topics have been covered, so at least there's room for a conversation starter when a topic does come up. There's something to point back to within this plan that was captured at this moment in time to help the conversation begin, at least to get off the ground. So thank you all. And I also, I think due to the technical issues, got tripped up here a little bit, but you all are very fortunate to have a talented staff, planning staff that we as the project team were able to work with throughout this effort. Some here this evening, such as Mr. Ellebarger, but also some that are not, that have played a big role in creating this plan and helped us with outreach to the community, setting up different events, helping us out as folks who have a better pulse on existing conditions and the citizens of the community as well. So thank you to the town and your all staff as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
And Christine, no one signed up to speak, I don't think. But I will call anybody that want to speak in favor or in opposition to the comprehensive land use plan now come forth. Not seeing any. Thank you again. I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'll turn it over to the board for consideration. There's several things you can consider here. You consider adopting as requested by the applicants here, actually our consultants. Or we can table, the decision to some of the other commissioners come back. I don't think I've heard any requests from anybody hate they missed the vote and want to hold it, anything. So I will entertain a motion either way.
Mayor Curran,
Yes.
a single motion to adopt or reject the plan will be enough. You don't have to do a plan consistency statement with the 2017 comprehensive plan.
I move to approve the Rolesville 2050 comprehensive plan.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
No, sir.
All right. Not hearing any. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed likewise? Sounds like the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The motion's approved. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
You said it doesn't need a follow-up motion at all?
Does not.
Okay. So we'll close this one. I think we've been going on for almost 2 hours, probably about an hour and 45 minutes. So we will take a 10-minute recess. I'm not sure if that clock is accurate with the construction going on. I got 8:12, so it's pretty close.
What I have.
So let's come back at 8:22 if we would. So we're going to stay in recess to 8:22. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the back order. We're back in session of the Rolesville Board Commissioners Work Session meeting. Next item on the menu is the continuation of legislative hearing for 10-year affordable housing plan. We had continued that from last meeting, and I will just open the public hearing. Take statement from Mike and also any consultants that want to speak on this.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We'll start with some introductions here for item 5B, the 10-year affordable housing plan. I'm Mike Ellebarger, the interim planning director. Behind me is Ben. He is with the firm of TPMA, and we have Mark with Wake County Housing here, also in the audience. He'll get involved when we have some Q&A here in a moment. So I'm just going to do a few introductory slides, also have Ben come up and speak to some of these slides here. We'll get through this, and then we can, of course, open it up for conversation. We did feel that there was a need for kind of answering that question, how did we get here to today? And in the last presentation, Greg kind of covered that, kind of the history and the pathway, so to speak, of how that comprehensive plan project came to be and its 14-month journey and so forth. And this project has pretty much an equally long lifespan. So real quickly, in November of 2022, the town board passed a resolution to create an affordable housing subcommittee. And that was kind of the kickoff leg to get the town started on the initiative of talking about this topic. A draft request for proposal, or RFP, was created, and that was put out on the market, so to speak, in June of 2023. It was vetted here before the board at a work session, in June of 2023, advertised in July of 2023, and then through selection, interview process, et cetera, Thomas P. Miller and Associates, TPMA, the consultant, was selected, and contract was executed very beginning of October 2023. So in 2023, nearly a year went by from, again, the inception of the concept of, hey, the town wants to take on and perform a study on the topic of housing, to executing a contract with the consultant. Then that consultant performed their work and created, so that's between the fall of 2023 and through spring of 2025, so approximately 15 or so months, brought us to this most recent spring. The plan was then brought forth to the planning board at 2 meetings in July and September, and we'll get into those points a little bit. And then that brings us here in October here, again, with a slight delay, 2-week delay, to open the public hearing here, the legislative hearing for the plan before the Board of Commissioners. Just a tiny little bit of background. Obviously, this is known information. The town has undergone both population and housing growth, kind of one causes the other, over the last decade or so, rating as one of the fastest growing communities in North Carolina. But with this has come escalating housing costs for a host of reasons, that none of which are mostly in control of the town. But then the mix of housing has also been rather stagnant, predominantly single-family detached. But as I was sitting here this evening, I was thinking through and calculating the amount of townhomes that have been actually approved through rezonings per se, and developed. My count comes to about 1,800. So as the projects come before the board, it might seem a little here, a little there, but those numbers do accumulate. Now, the single-family detached product on the ground I know that it's north of 3,000. So again, it's a percentage of it, but it's not an insignificant percentage of it. But that is essentially the mix of the housing component. We had a little bit of multifamily. There's a project, over off Granite Falls, the Grande, et cetera. The cobblestone mixed use has put, I think it's 160 or 180 units on the ground, just recently opened. And then the board very recently approved a rezoning that enabled, I'm going to guess, around 250 units that will come to fruition here over on Burlington Mills Road. But really, that's the extent of multifamily in the town. So that's really the mix that we're looking at, approved through the years and on the ground and in the pipeline, so to speak. So again, to address the challenges of that housing mix and what the future would hold for housing and all the intricacies that derive from housing, transportation, employment opportunities, et cetera. TPMA was engaged to go forth and take on this plan to look at affordable housing as it became known, affordable housing, and has come up with this 43-page plan that generally we feel meets the scope and the intent of the RFP and is a great starting point on this topic for the town. So I'm going to turn this over to Ben at this time to go over the summary of findings.
Thank you all so much for having me today, and it's great to see so many of you that worked really closely, closely with on this plan to inform it and make sure that it meets the needs of your community. So I'll briefly go over the summary of findings, and I'll highlight two really important ones just to underscore. So between 2013 and 2023, both Wake County and the town of Rolesville experienced rapid population growth. Rolesville has an affluent population, but is still experiencing affordability issues. Roughly 44% of the individuals that responded to our public opinion survey with the house mentioned that they have a household income of below $100,000, reported difficulty affording their housing costs. Rolesville's housing mix is predominantly single-family detached homes, and that is roughly 90% of the homes in Rolesville are single-family detached. And in June 2024, the median home sale price was $639,500. So here's one that I kind of want to pause at and underscore as an important talking point as we continue throughout this presentation. So one of the things that we point to in this project, in this affordable housing plan, is the importance of a diverse housing mix among all communities. You want those homes, single-family homes that are smaller, or townhomes for your younger residents who are just graduating college and maybe want to move back and be close to their families. Some of those individuals who are getting together, maybe trying to start a family and need affordable childcare. We know childcare is a growing expense on top of housing, so being close to your family is really important. On the other end, you also want smaller homes and more affordable homes for aging populations, so their families are around them to take care of them so they can age in place. They don't have to move across county lines or out of the area to stay close to the ones who will be taking care of them. So when we were creating this plan, we wanted to make sure that those residents were considered in the mix of housing that Rolesville has. So when we look at that 90% number, that seems to be out of balance from what a community might prefer its housing mix to be. Lack of housing diversity affects the ability to attract younger families, senior residents, so on and so forth, as I mentioned. The other point here is workforce for essential services. So I was talking a little bit with Michael before this presentation, and I was driving down, I don't know exactly what road it is, but in front here. I noticed that there was a Publix. He mentioned that there's a WakeMed campus coming to the area. Those workers need to have somewhere to live. They can live outside of Rolesville, but one of the things that we heard when we were on the ground presenting, I think it was last fall for that matter, that traffic's an issue here. When you have a homogeneous housing mix, especially when housing mix that costs $639,000, it's difficult for those workers to live within the area. So they might resort to living outside somewhere else. That creates more traffic and congestion. So again, stressing the importance of a diverse housing mix in the community is sort of the core tenet of this plan. And the last finding here is that there are very few multifamily units and rental options in Rolesville. Predominance of high-cost single-family homes could put the town at risk of economic downturn. There's some research, I believe this is linked in the report as well, that communities that have a more diverse housing mix are more resilient during economic downturns. So when people lose their jobs, housing affordability is an important factor for them to stay in place. So the goals and strategies. One thing I'll stress as we review these goals and strategies is that we wanted to keep this high level. Rolesville is at the beginning of its journey of understanding of what housing looks like and incorporating housing initiatives for the community. So as we were having our conversations with a lot of the representatives from Rolesville, we agreed collectively that a high level, more malleable and adaptable plan was the path that we wanted to take as we were creating this plan. So first one you'll see is a plan for the future of housing and building a vision for growth. So one of the challenges that we sort of uncovered was that there were mixed opinions about what affordable housing should and could look like for Rolesville. One of the things that we noted was that in 2021, I believe it was, there was a zoning amendment that created larger lot sizes and larger setback requirements which typically coincides with larger homes. So the fact that that was a recent zoning amendment and folks were talking about affordable housing kind of led us to the conclusion that there isn't really a consistent belief in the community for affordable housing. So our recommendation to the planning division for Rolesville is to help work through and create a vision for growth. Number two, consider establishing affordable housing fund. This is a tricky one for smaller communities because your tax base is so much smaller that it's hard to say what you would dedicate that fund for, but getting ahead of this early is one of the things that we've seen other smaller communities, one of the steps that we've seen other smaller communities taking. And then the third one for goal one, explore the possibilities of expanding infrastructure. That was a recurring theme that we heard among various stakeholders, is that Rolesville, to at least our understanding, doesn't control its own infrastructure, at least for water and sewer. So working with the county was an important step in that. So what other infrastructure considerations might take place? Goal two, diversifying the housing mix. So amend the LEO to allow for a greater variety of housing types. Again, referring back to that 2021 zoning amendment that I mentioned earlier. Identify areas best suited for denser development. This seems to be happening already, so that's exciting to see along the corridor that we have just outside the building. Create more opportunities for rental housing. One of the things that we found that was represented in the findings is that there is a strong dependency on single family homes that are owner occupied. So renter, again, provides more of those affordable options for younger individuals or older individuals who are maybe wanting to exit their former homes. Number four, consider development fee waivers to encourage affordable housing development. Municipalities are kind of limited to what they can do to incentivize affordable housing development within their communities. So this was one of the tools that we've seen used elsewhere that we thought fit the context of Rolesville. And then go through, focus on developing a housing ecosystem. So participate in regional housing efforts, engage with local developers and builders. Those are two that can kind of work hand in hand. In the report, there are a few case studies that were highlighted. One is the Home Consortium, which is for a county outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where there are several communities that came together within that county to essentially have conversations about what they're doing related to housing, steps that they could take together, or maybe just being informed about what other communities are doing. This was brought up in the last presentation we had again last fall, but that Rolesville doesn't exist on an island. This is certainly true. There are neighboring communities like Zebulon, Wendell that maybe have affordable housing, but understanding the efforts that they're putting into affordable housing as you continue your future plans are all things that should be considered, and Wake County for that matter. And the last one, develop and launch a public education campaign. This one kind of ties back to that vision for growth, plan for the future of housing. There are mixed opinions and mixed perspectives about what affordable housing could and should look like in Rolesville. So by bringing community members together to have these conversations will be an important part of establishing the vision for growth. So I'll slide over here, and Michael, I think I'm turning it back to you.
Sure. So this slide's meant to cover the planning board's review of the housing plan. On July 28th, it was first brought to the board. There's a lot of discussion there. It is noteworthy that we did not have the expertise of Ben, the consultant there, and that is of no fault of his own. But he was not there, part of the presentation. And that needs to be part of the communication. There was a lot of discussion about basically what some of the members thought that the plan should include or should entail versus what maybe the scope of it was. At the end of that, there was a motion to deny, and the planning board voted 4-2 to recommend denial to the board. After discussion with the consultant, those comments and concerns of the planning board were shared with the consultant. The consultant did a write-up of responses to those that was shared back to the planning board, and the plan was brought back on September 22nd to them. Again, that dialogue from the consultant responding to those shared concerns, et cetera, was brought there. Staff again did another presentation after a lengthy discussion there at the planning board. the planning board came up with a new recommendation of approval with a 6-0 vote. So that's the kind of journey between those two meetings there with the planning board. So it is coming before you with a recommendation of approval from the planning board. Now, included in the packet here is that document with those written comments and concerns from the planning board from their first meeting, the July meeting, and then the responses, which were written up by the consultant, Ben. And then the second document is to just chronicle the dialogue that occurred at the September 22nd meeting. It's not in minutes, but it's certainly more than just typical minutes. So it's a little more fleshed out kind of discussion, or sorry, written memo of that discussion. This is to give the board and the public just a written history of how it did matriculate through the planning board. Turn back to you. Yeah. So this slide is meant to kind of exemplify at a much higher level the major points that the planning board came up, and then Mark's responses to those, and using the plan as the resource for these responses.
Yeah, so again, this is just a high level of what was written out in the packet. So happy to go into more detailed context as we take questions at the end of this presentation. So there was one concern about the plan's level of detail. So as I kind of led with, we wanted a higher level plan, and this was through discussion that we had with the folks we were working through with Rolesville's planning department. Communities that are earlier on in their journey and really didn't have an established vision for housing, we mutually agreed that higher level strategies are more palatable for the community, especially as the plan comes through for the first time. So that's how we landed at a three goal higher level plan. No creation of programs. Again, kind of mentioned this earlier. It would be really difficult for the town to create any specific program of its own. However, considering creating a affordable housing fund early on, it would be an important step for as home prices continue to rise and as Rolesville continues to grow, having an early on established fund so it can be a little bit more reactive to some of the needs that might pop up over the next 5 to 10 years should be considered. How to work with developers and builders. I'm kind of taking a second to think through what exactly this question was, but it looks like it was related to the local development ordinance to allow a wider variety of lot sizes. So again, sort of as I mentioned earlier, there was a zoning amendment in 2021 that seemed to move towards larger lot sizes, larger homes. So working with developers and builders to review some of your zoning codes, what makes sense for them and what it's sort of telling them. I think it's coming back to me what exactly this was saying. There was I think this zoning code that I was referring to was referring to an area where the town had a priority to put several townhomes. What developers and builders were telling us was that based on the zoning that was there, though it's being communicated verbally that the community would like to see townhomes there, by practice of their development, it wasn't very feasible for them. So as you consider zoning amendments in the future, have the voice of developers and builders in the room. Disagreement with encouraging density. It is impossible for a community to adopt a no growth or a low growth strategy. So a lot of this came from traffic concerns within the community of Rolesville. If one of the things that our rebuttal to this argument essentially would be that as your community continues to grow, there is no such thing really as no growth. Either you're becoming more expensive, or your community is declining, or you're growing your housing stock to meet the needs of the community. So it's sort of, I guess, just a general disagreement to the comment. But that's where strategic planning comes into place, understanding where you want to have your developments, and making sure that those those account for smart development practices, to make sure that you're accounting for the traffic that might be impacting certain areas. Appropriateness of case studies. So there was a comment that case studies weren't really related to some of the case studies that were included weren't necessarily related to Rolesville. So to that comment, my response would be that some of the communities were comparable. So for the Affordable Housing Fund, Nightdale, which isn't too far down the road, was one of the communities that we included. Outside of that, we wanted to incorporate a more national perspective in terms of things that communities are doing. So I mentioned the home consortium that is taking place in the community outside of Charlotte. But there are a few other national practices. Again, we wanted to take a larger lens and not just look at what's happening in North Carolina, but what some other communities are doing to create more affordable housing. Purpose of the plan, help Rolesville establish a vision and high-level plan for affordable housing. I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head so far throughout this presentation. So again, we wanted this plan to be higher level so Rolesville can adapt to its growing needs over the course of the next 10 years. And recommendations versus regulations, high-level plan, again, it allows for more flexible implementation. The plan serves as a community-informed guide to proceed towards increased affordability. The town of Rolesville leadership will work on how best to implement the plan. So again, through the conversations that we had with the town of Rolesville planning staff, we kind of gave them a framework, and then it's up to them sort of to decide what the best implementation process going forward would be. So that's sort of the back and forth that we have. And Mike, I'm going to turn it back to you.
So that basically concludes the prepared staff presentation on this. We've got a recommendation here before you, but again, myself, Ben, and Mark with Wake County are here for whatever type of questions that you would like to ask, or move to the public hearing and see if there's any public who'd like to speak.
Yes, sir. I will start. Thank you, sir. My first question is, how do we leverage Wake County housing partnerships?
I think that's a great segue to bring up Mark.
I saw him sitting there. He was so quiet. So
No, I appreciate it. No, I think it's a great presentation. I'm very pleased to be here before you all and to kind of be first in the door to see this plan as it's presented before you. We're excited about you all taking this next step, and I appreciate the investment in considering housing affordability in Rolesville. It is part of our responsibility as the housing department to build strong relationships with municipal staff throughout the county. So it's making sure that we have worked in the past, we've worked very closely with Michael and with Meredith. We're going to continue to work very closely with Mike. And as we have those continuous conversations, we will be building awareness of resources, programs, and continuing to provide technical assistance. We are basically on call to continue to work alongside you to help you work through your considerations for how you want to implement this vision that's laid out in this plan.
with that, I think earlier in the presentation, you talk about affordable housing fund. So you can help us figure out how to establish that.
We can provide some recommendations and considerations. We're happy to facilitate connections, for example, with other municipalities who have done that.
Yes, sir.
We're happy to help you think through kind of the legislative limitations or opportunities within the state of North Carolina, and really help you think through those questions of, okay, you know, if we wanted to set aside a fund, for example, of $1 million, what would we need to do to get there, and what would the impact be in the town of Rolesville? And so I think we have, I'm going to brag on my staff. I think I have a lot of talented people who work with me, and I'm confident that we would be capable of helping you think through those questions.
Okay.
And we don't have a fund today.
No.
I know some developers have said, you know, we can't put affordable housing in, we'll donate to your fund. Is that even legal? To our attorney is that something we can request or whatever?
The town currently doesn't have a program or a fund. If the town were to develop a program or a fund or a housing authority or any of those sort of things, you can certainly imagine that being the sort of thing that a developer might offer as part of their development plan.
And that's kind of what you're suggesting, more or less?
That is one option. I think in North Carolina, it's very, there is a needle to thread legally, and I'm going to look to the town attorney who knows I'm not a lawyer.
I was very careful with how I phrased what I mentioned there.
there's a firm line around mandatory requirements for either financial contributions or development of affordable housing that can't be crossed. However, as a reference point, you may have seen recently in the city of Raleigh with the Rust Bus development downtown, the developer had originally committed to including affordable units. They have determined that's no longer financially feasible. They would be willing to make a donation to the city in an equivalent amount of what it would take to create affordable units. And so that seems to be legally acceptable. I haven't touched base with them on the exact mechanics of it. There are ways to do it, I think, if you are very intentional and careful about it. But we would also recommend, Wake County has been very successful in leveraging the growth of the tax base to have reoccurring contributions from the tax base to have a fund that's going to create more stability so that you have a line item in your budget that you can rely on every year. And I think one thing from working with developers in Wake County, developers really appreciate consistency and having expectations. And so if they know that they can come to the town of Rolesville and have an understanding of a program and how much funding may be available to support a project, I think that can work to attract more folks who will leverage that, that asset.
Other questions?
Thank you.
I have a
Thanks for the
question.
question.
So do you all have I don't even know what to call it, a process to help us figure out exactly what affordable housing means to Rolesville?
Can you, I'm going to answer your question with a question. When you ask a question, defining what affordable housing means to Rolesville,
Right.
are you thinking about determining, is it based on income? Is it continuing the visioning?
I think that there are some inconsistencies in what is believed to be affordable housing. Senior housing, that doesn't mean that that's affordable housing.
Right,
55 plus, that doesn't mean that that's affordable housing. So is there some way that you help municipalities narrow down what affordable housing is?
Absolutely. So we come and make presentations to municipal boards all the time. We can be invited to community events. We would be happy to partner with any form of stakeholder engagement that you think might be productive. We have many, many slide decks that cover exactly that topic of defining what affordable housing is and what affordable housing isn't, and really addressing many of the misconceptions around what affordable housing is.
Okay, because I'm not quite sure if it was, since I read both of them, this document or the comp plan, where it was outlined in there that there are some inconsistencies and we do need to all get on the same, have an idea of what it looks like for Rolesville.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I think it's very important to have that community buy-in and input and understanding to build support for initiatives around affordability.
Yeah, and so I'll chime in, not with the question, but just a point of clarification. So one thing that we've been doing as staff is essentially, when it comes to developing our definition, is listening to the different perspectives that have come from you all as a board and from the community. And when we think of the facets of the definition, 6 things have risen to the top as far as contributing to our definition of affordable housing. The first one that was brought up was some time ago, was external workforce housing. And so that's teachers, firemen, police officers, for them to be able to move closer. And then as we did an assessment of how far our internal staff work community, there's more, that's another aspect of workforce housing. And so how can we make it to where people who work for the town of Roseville can live in the town of Roseville? The third aspect was, as we look to grow our commercial industry and pursue that's one thing that they look for is affordability. And when it comes to the service industry, and so those people that are waiting tables and having some of those frontline jobs, it's very hard to underpin a successful business ecosystem when you don't have employees that can drive a minimum of 10 to 15 minutes to get to work. Once you get above a certain threshold, then the access, and you see more jobs, we're hiring, looking for employees signs. The other is the senior affordable housing. And then as we pursue the affordable housing development behind Town Hall, that window or threshold of a certain AMI of that affordability between $200,000 and $250,000. But our most recent conversations with the planning board, as they look to their more I don't know the correct word, people that have a higher threshold of affordability, that have gone to college, that are engineers, that are lawyers or whatever, that affordability range that is like south of $400,000, not necessarily $200,000, is something that has arisen. And so us as staff, we've kind of developed this working definition that we just continue adding facets to, and we keep these things in mind as we interface with Wake County and also potential partners, and saying what is the product you can bring. And so that's kind of the language we use with the TCC, the Triangle Community Coalition. And so they say, we're trying to figure out what kind of product to bring to you in our developments that match your ideal affordability, because they've heard us bring that up so much. And so that's the language we carry into those coffees and those meetups and even those panels that we sit on to talk with the home builder community. But we need to kind of bridge that, clarify the definition for that more commercial side as well. But that's the working definition that's really, really squishy that we've been operating with, that we've heard from you, your current elected officials and prior ones, and also the community and from a staff perspective. And so I want you to know that we have a definition that we're building off of it. And so we're not starting from scratch. Okay. One of the biggest things we need to do is kind of document it and say, this is where we are as a community, and this definition reflects the people that live here and the demographic that lives here, and also those 14,000 people that will be moving into these future homes as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's good to know, and I would like to see the squishy version, please, because that would help a lot. I think if we all had that to be on the same page to refer to, then that would help a lot.
And if I can piggyback a little bit, provide two points. One, drawing everybody back to the comprehensive plan. Mm-hmm. If part of that in looking at economic development is to rebalance development in Rolesville to incorporate more commercial, if that commercial is going to be more retail and a focus on amenitizing the town, to Mr. Manager's point, where are the folks who work in those amenities and in those shops and in those places, where are they going to work? Or where are they going to live, rather? So we need places that are affordable to support that workforce. I think it's part and parcel of realizing the goals laid out in that comprehensive plan. And as part of our technical assistance, what we would be happy to do, you've been working on an internal definition of what affordable housing is. I think we would be eager for the opportunity to revisit kind of the broad definition of what affordable housing is, mm-hmm. and then it sounds like what you're looking for is what can it look like in Rolesville? So presenting you with really a menu of options and what might be most attainable within this context and the resources that are available.
Good job. Thank you.
Please.
So April, also to address your question like a little more head on, specifically as it relates to the plan that is. So there are two tables within the report. One is table 6 and the other one is table 7. They follow each other. One looks at the most common occupations within Rolesville. Mm-hmm. It looks at how much they're making per year and their maximum housing cost, which essentially is just what they're making a year divided by 12, and then 30% of their income. So with the most common occupations, so there you see a lot of waiters, waitresses, cooks, building cleaning workers, cashiers, so on. That's common among many communities. Mm-hmm. And then below that, table 7 is for what a lot of communities deem as essential workers, so your EMS, police officers, all those individuals. And again, what their maximum affordability threshold is. And the max that we see is for registered nurses, which is at $2,000 per month. But that goes as low as $746 for home health and personal care aides. So just to put that in perspective and to give a more solid definition on what affordable housing is.
Thank you. I did see that in there, and I know that question was asked at our last meeting of a developer if waitresses or grocery store employees could live there. So I think those are good to have in here. Thank you.
I think my only concern was we were talking about putting funding on the side to help out. I just want to caution with that. I mean, I know if the developers are going to help with that and everything else, that's fine. If it's a commercial side, that's fine as well. But otherwise, if it's coming from local, county, state, or federal levels, that's just more tax money that we're just taking from everyone else to put into that. So that's my concern. I don't want to raise taxes just because we're trying to fund that. So we looking for other ways to fund that fund is what we'd probably be looking for.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Paul. And also, it's hard, and I think we talked about this early on, it's hard for us to get funding. It's hard for us to get help.
Right.
It's, we had the Oak Grove Crossing project that Wake County was on fund, big portion of it, and it was proved. It was in our priority list, top 7 of their list, and 64 units. And it went to the state, and we just don't qualify. We don't have this, we don't have the transit, we don't have the grocery stores close enough, we don't have the senior citizen centers. Our numbers just don't support getting money to do stuff. And Wake County pulled out of that project for us because, they won't want to do it alone. So what were you going to say, Eric?
And I would say that we don't have those census tracts that a lot of people take advantage of as well. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it's kind of difficult. It's almost like it's geared to go in different big metropolitan areas. And I can understand you, but if you use closer to transit, we don't have transit out here, which kind of makes it tough. Maybe one day, but it's tough for us to qualify for those dollars from Wake County was going to help us out, but the state is just didn't qualify.
Wake County is helping you out. It's still your tax money.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
true.
Remember that.
Well, that's true, but it's going to us rather than, Morrisville or Cary, but, it's money they're going to tax and
Right, regardless.
we just don't get our share. It don't come home.
Right.
You're right. We're paying for
You're paying
affordable
for it.
housing somewhere
Yeah,
else.
somewhere else, right.
That's a good point you're making. Rolesville citizens are paying for affordable housing somewhere else in Wake County, but it doesn't come back home to us because we don't have the things needed.
And I think through pursuit of the comprehensive plan, certainly the town of Rolesville will get there, and it is difficult but not impossible, especially as the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, every year they're revising. They have the qualified allocation plan, that is their annual policy document, and their competition for tax credits. For example, in this year's draft QAP, they've increased the acceptable distance from a proposed development to amenities to qualify for the full points for that section of the competition. So they're looking at it, they're considering it. There are more tax credit resources being directed throughout the country. There's a 12% increase across the board. And also, you're not limited only to the competitive tax credits. There are the currently non-competitive 4% tax credit developments. They can be more expensive for local government to finance, but it's not impossible. And of course, I think you have a really fantastic example of creatively using public land to develop affordable housing that does not require tax credits at all. So there are a lot of different ways to approach this issue, and we're happy to help the town think creatively about how to garner those resources to achieve those goals.
Yeah, it's been 10 years since we've been able to get any help from the state or Wake County. Wake County is willing, but it's good to hear the numbers has changed a little bit, because maybe in the future. I don't know where those projects are. I think Wake County cut a lot of them because of funding or something, didn't they? Or do you know? There was like 7, 8 of them. We was gonna get one, but it didn't work out.
And I think that was one that was proposed, and then they did not receive tax credits from the state.
That's right. Wake County had designated money for their share of it.
Yeah, we're always willing to help out.
Any other questions, Board? Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody signed up, Christina? Okay. So the public hearing is open. I'm going to call for anybody who want to speak in favor or against. No one signed up. So anybody here who want to speak? All right. Not hearing any, I'm going to close the public hearing. And board, I think you got the recommendations in your packet there. This calls for a consistency statement. Is that required on this?
It's a great question. So for our plans that we have adopted that mandate a regulatory piece, so the Greenway plan, our LDO references the Greenway plan and says if you design things, you need to build out the Greenway network shown in the plan. I don't know whether we have any pieces in the plan proposed that set any standard that someone would need to comply with under the LDO. Does that make sense?
So if we approve it, then be on the safe side, you go ahead and adopt this.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, you don't get in trouble for it, but it looks like, because I think it's important to know, I don't believe there are any provisions today in this plan that are regulatory in nature. It merely calls for the board to consider adopting regulatory changes in the future.
It's recommendations.
Yep.
Plan.
Go for it.
Okay. I move to approve the Rolesville 10-year affordable housing plan and adopt a statement of consistency and reasonableness as the housing plan is consistent with Rolesville comprehensive plan because it supports housing diversity and therefore considered reasonable.
Okay, so I got a motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion second. Any further discussions from the board? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds like the ayes have it. Ayes do have it. So thank you, board.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys. Thank everybody that worked on this, Mike. Appreciate it. You know, your staff. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Well put together.
So with that, we don't really have anything else on the agenda, but I open it up for the attorney or manager, if you have anything you want to close us out with. No?
No, sir.
Bet you, anything?
He wants to do something.
I do. The first thing I wanted to just celebrate, as you can see, the chambers. We don't have red carpet in here anymore, and we don't have yellow walls. And you notice that the lights are not yellow; they are been transitioned to LED rod bulbs. And so the chamber renovations are about 90%, 95% complete. The remainder will be updating this area here, finishing out some of the more visual things to help with the audio quality, and then installing paneling. But things have progressed despite being impacted by some shortages in the building industry and delays, because there's been several logistical blips in every single industry in recent weeks. Even Amazon, they're not delivering stuff on time because of certain areas and certain errors. But we're looking forward to presenting, putting the finishing touches on it, leading into our next meeting. But the goal of this project and many others is to just make it a more conducive workspace for staff to hear all the time. And then also make it to where our YouTube videos don't look as yellow and more presentable, and then let this chambers be a reflection of the places that we're kind of going as a town, continuing to evolve in how we serve, how we look, and even our aesthetic. And so we're definitely moving into a new phase as a staff. And I think this is reflective of that. And so just wanted to celebrate that. Thank Christina, the public works staff, and the project managers that have been helping move this project along and doing it at night on the weekends to make sure it doesn't interfere with the work that you all are doing here and that we're doing here as well. We have Mingle on Main coming up on Friday. You see emails about it. We're looking forward to celebrating our business community with that. So we're encouraging everybody to go out. I think it starts at what time on Friday? 5 o'clock. And so get out there early because you know the days are getting shorter and it gets dark early, but we're going to have ample kind of like light plants and things like that so people can navigate it safely We are very excited to be able to continue to support our small and local businesses down at the intersection and throughout Rolesville and the corridor. And so we're excited to celebrate them. And then I will be emailing you all. I received just a presentation that they give an update on the Main Street project, and I'll send you all that via email. But things to be mindful of. It's still a construction zone through the Main Street corridor, even though the intersection is open. So we're asking everybody to continue to drive safely. We're continuing work on the pedestrian area at the Main Street intersection. And so we should be able to see those pavers in certain areas advance. We had some technical meetings in the field this morning, and we were able to do some value engineering and pivot. And so we'll see those pavers start moving towards completion over the next 2 to 3 weeks instead of the next 8 to 10 weeks, which is something that people may have been hearing. And also within the month, we'll start seeing more activity at the new Burlington Mills intersection as far as that light starting to blink. And then moving forward with the connection of the new section to the old section that's closer to the school. And so within the next month, probably before the next time we meet, we'll start seeing some traffic patterns move and shift. And so by the end of the year, this light that's right here in front of Town Hall will no longer exist, and it'll be a right in, right out. And our residents will be making a right turn on the new Burlington Mills stoplight to get to the school and vice versa. And so there'll just be some continued shifting and traffic patterns. We're hoping that it'll contribute to there being less traffic, and because there'll be less traffic impacting the flow of people who are passing through areas more, because we'll have more storage lanes and turn lanes and such for getting in and out of the school over there off Burlington Mills Road. Additional things we'll start seeing is the streetscape incidentals, which are the street lights, benches, trash cans, landscaping, and others. We're going to start seeing those get installed by Lakeview Electric and Duke Energy over the next few weeks. And so we're just looking forward to all these different bells and whistles coming into play. And then later this month, which is kind of like the bells made me think of Christmas bells and Christmas lights. Our Public Works Department start hanging lights down on some of the new poles and also existing poles on Main Street. But in general, those are the high level things. We've been working with residents and business owners to kind of get through some of the technical problems there in front of some of the businesses. And so we'll keep working through those, finding solutions and advancing it. But as you all can see, even across from Town Hall, things are progressing with finishing up the hardscapes, which is the concrete and the new entrances to businesses in the area. And so we're excited about it, and we're looking forward to things moving. I think since I hadn't seen y'all, another thing they mentioned is that we were met with the Raleigh Visitors Bureau and some of the hospitality commissions. And thank you, Dan, for a lot of the conversations you've been having. I think you and the mayor, you both have been doing work about hotels and mentioning hotels and stuff. And so we're putting together a packet to be able to do some speed networking with some of these developers and hotel chains to be able to present ourselves as being a viable candidate for that. This goes in conjunction with working with NCFC and other future partners with advancing the farm and development out there. So that's kind of happening in the background. I was working with June. He sent over an update to me today about kind of like the journey of the farm. So we'll be bringing that back before you. We know that we had the architect come forward as far as the building of the design and build out of the building that's there. But there's a lot more work that's going on to how can we find some alternative funding sources and partners to help bring some different amenities and attributes to it. So lighting on the field, clubhouse, dugouts for the fields, and NCFC, they're interested in partnering with us. We're pursuing getting a memorandum of understanding or to state our intent to partner with them so that we can try to bring some of those phases of the farm into our near future. And so those are things that we've been doing over the last 2 weeks. And in addition to interviewing a lot of different positions, we have 3 vacancies on our executive leadership team right now: planning director, fire chief, and HR director, as well as administrative staff, and then building out the engineering department. And so we're working through all those internal things as well. So it's been pretty busy here for us internally on the day-to-day, but things are going well. And so we're looking forward to celebrating these different accomplishments, and also the addition of new staff members in the coming weeks as well. And so I just wanted to bring those kind of rapid updates to you. But thank you all for your support, and also for your patience. We're working through a lot of different things, but we're really excited about a lot of the work that we're doing.
Good.
Very good.
Yeah. Just a couple follow-ups. I think the June had a great presentation on the senior citizen thing. I didn't see it online or in our package. So could you make sure
Yes.
those 2 presentations are shared with Linwood and Michael Paul? Because I think it's pretty good. I didn't see it anywhere, so that would be good. We talked about, Eric, you didn't mention it, tabletop receptacles built in up here. Is that still going
Yes.
to happen?
Yep, they
So
will.
we don't have to get under the plug-in?
And so there's already a strip underneath, but we're going to be drilling new holes and putting those plastic grommets on them, so that you have the pop-up receptacle, so you don't have to take a knee and get underneath to plug in. And so that's some of the finishings that'll do it. This countertop is going to be re-laminated to be a gray that matches over there where Christina sits. And so this
Okay, so it's coming up. Then.
this is it's gonna be covered with another laminate. And so we'll see your user experience shift before your next meeting as well. And hopefully we're gonna get it star-studded in time for you to use for like 2 meetings, Commissioner Vilga. And so we'll do that. And if needed, we'll hang a purse hook or something under there too, for your commissioners need.
Do we get electricity?
Yeah, you're not gonna have to throw it over top.
That's
I
good.
like it. Fancy.
You're gonna miss out on that, Paul. So
I see how it is. I understand.
that's right. One other thing, and this is cold for you, so you don't have to answer follow-up. I know people don't forget things. I know early in this Main Street project, we talked about mailboxes. So
Still in the plan.
let's talk about that again. So I've been asked a couple times, are we going to do the mailboxes?
Yes, we are.
And, that's part of the Main Street discussion we had, was to replace all the mailboxes along Main Street to make it look, nice. Huh?
Uniformity.
Uniformity, yeah. So let's talk about that maybe, because I know I haven't remembered us talking
Yes.
about it in a while. So it wasn't part of the project, it was just talked about.
Yeah, it's in the budget.
It is in the budget?
It's in the budget for the project, because that would technically take place this year, since the project will be over in this year. And that's a promise. That's a guarantee. It's like one of the Louisiana cooks will say.
That's good.
And so that's on our list for kind of this winter, is kind of engagement with those homeowners. The 2 or 3 people that we've talked to so far are not opposed to having a new mailbox. Everybody's kind of loving a new mailbox, the idea of it, but we'll work with the residents and those that are facing it with stylistically what that looks like.
That's great.
But that's definitely in the budget for this year.
That's great. I was going to mention the Mingle on Main. You mentioned that, so that's good. But also we got the Fall Fun Fest coming up. That's a big event. So, and that's the 1st of November. So don't forget that. Last thing, save the best for last. Our clerk, Miss Watkins, has now Miss Frazier. Miss Frazier now has passed her certification for clerk. She worked on that last week.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
You did a great job, and I think you said you have to be internship or some type of thing.
Another year of taking online classes and attending some clerk conferences, and I complete with everything. But I finished the government school as of Friday.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
Yay.
So let's end on that note. Thank you, Board. Without any opposition, we are adjourned. Not hearing any. That's great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Paul, we got out of here